Hey everybody, welcome to the Super Lunch Bros podcast, episode 24, 25. I don't know, I should probably keep track of those.
Almost had the intro down.
Yeah, actually might be more than that now, because we've done like supplementary ones. Anyway, uh, we had some fights. Well, before we get to the fights again, like every time, if you're just listening to this on Spotify or Podbean, we have this up on YouTube and vice versa. Make sure to like and subscribe. Put comments below. Let us know what you thought about the fights. Suggestions for future episodes, all that good stuff. My name's Brendan, and that is Nate, and we are the Super Lunch Bros.
You know it.
So let's talk about Dustin Poirier.
Let's talk about him.
Um,
First of all, is this the best year of fights that you can ever remember?
I don't know. I was thinking about that the other day. There was a string of fights right around UFC 200. So back in 2018 when that happened, I think, or maybe 2017, um, where there was a lot of sentimental stuff that happened, as well as amazing like historical events. You know, with Dan Henderson beating Dan Henderson getting that weird win with the backwards elbow. Um, and then on that same card, I think that was 199. On that same card, that was also the same year where Diaz beat McGregor. And then McGregor goes out. Wait, hold on. Did
No, that
McGregor?
was
Well, but did McGregor beat Aldo before that? I don't think so. I think.
yes.
Oh, he
McGregor
did.
had beat Aldo before that
So I think that was
because he beat
198.
Aldo
Yes.
after he beat Mendez.
So he beats Aldo. Then he's
Then he
supposed,
goes
yeah,
up to
because
50.
he
He
was
goes up to
supposed to
55.
fight. He was supposed to fight Rafael dos Anjos. Rafael dos Anjos breaks his foot. Then he fights Nate Diaz, loses to Diaz at 170 because Diaz says, "Oh, man, I can't make 155. I can't even make 160." So he fights at 170, loses that fight. Then I think it was 202. He comes back and gets the win. And then in 205, he captures the 155 belt. So we had that, like, the great year of Conor McGregor. Michael Bisping captured the title against Luke Rockhold. Um, we had TJ Dillashaw getting his title, defending his title that he took from Cody Garbrandt again. There was a lot of really good storylines, and that was just in like a small like 3 month period. So similar to what's going on right now. Um, the rest of the year will tell, and we'll see. But
But even
yeah,
just thinking back to earlier this year, we had the Joanna Jędrzejczyk fight, which was absolutely ridiculous. Like
bananas.
the amount of fights that people just go, "Oh yeah, that's fight of the year." This year, I feel like it's just every single 3 weeks we move that goalpost of, "Oh shoot, now like this fight's in contention for fight of the year."
Yeah, and I mean that's surely the case with a lot of these fights. I do not. I don't think this dethrones Joanna versus
Whaley,
Wiley. I think that fight was more complete. It was. This one had a little. I wouldn't say more drama, but it had like more of a cinematic cinematic style
oh
to
yeah,
it, where there like Poirier clearly goes down 2 rounds. Like he's clearly losing the first round, and
it's
then
looking
he.
like he's not going to be able to have an answer for Hooker's technicality.
Well, in the second round, he started to pick it up, and I started to
Mhm.
notice like I think he was winning that second round until that last barrage by Hooker. And say what you want about Hooker, he has this ability to um, steal rounds in a good way, where he's intelligently fighting in a way where he can finish the fight at any time, but he's also doing it in a way where he's because he's outputting damage in a visual manner that shows that he's winning the round. And then I'm just gonna be honest, I thought the Felder fight was an indicator. Could looking back now, the Felder fight was an indicator on how to beat Hooker. And that's if you can stay in there with him, like you have to have the skills to do it, obviously. But if you have the skills to go to the middle of that third round, Hooker slows down a lot. And if you can tag him enough, he's going to start spamming takedowns. That's not his game plan. That's kind of something that he does in the later rounds because he's a little gassed out and he knows it's a path to victory. And he can also, submit you. So it's not a bad game plan, but if you can stop that.
I got to give him credit. He's either if it's him or his coach or whatever combination, they're very aware of the point system and they play to it very well.
Yep.
In an intelligent manner. Like they truly go after points, kind of the way that you probably should, especially if you don't necessarily know if you can finish a fight.
Yeah, he does this thing where he doesn't necessarily put his foot on the gas the entire round. What he'll do is he'll fight in spats for the first half, and then in the second half of each round he'll try to pick it up because that's what sticks in the minds of the judges. I mean it's been successful for him so far, and he has gotten to a point where I think he belongs in the. I think he could get a title shot with one win over literally anybody in that division at this point.
He is right up there for sure.
But the problem,
there's a good chance that some point down the road he has that belt, depending on.
So I didn't realize this going in. He's 30 years old.
Is he 30? I thought he was younger.
No, Dustin Poirier is a year older than him.
Whew. How old is he in fight years? Is my question.
So Poirier is about 45 in fight years.
Yeah.
He's taken a lot of damage, but not as much until recently. And then on top of that, he's been fighting since he was 22. Actually, he might have been in the UFC when he was 22. Or the WEC. He's been fighting for a very, very long time at a high level. And Hooker was a kickboxer for a long time and then transferred over through City Kickboxing into MMA and has been very successful. He's really only had setbacks against the elite, being Edson Barbosa and Dustin Poirier. So,
which there's worse positions to be in the world than having setbacks against guys like that.
Yeah, he's I'm interested to see where he goes from here. I'd like to see him take some time off and recalibrate a little bit and wait for the division to kind of like sift itself out to see who he could face next. Because as of right now, we said this before, we're waiting for Gaethje versus Khabib. And then if Khabib doesn't retire, win, lose, or draw, we could see a rematch if Gaethje wins. Or if Khabib wins, we might see him face, I think it's unlikely that he'll fight Dustin again. I don't think there's people clamoring for that. If Tony gets a win here, a spectacular win, he could fight Tony.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind. I don't think he has the name recognition to get in the ring, but I wouldn't mind seeing Dan Hooker against Conor McGregor.
Yeah,
I think that would be a spectacular fight. I
don't think Conor McGregor belongs in, just because of his inactivity, and the last fight he had was against Cowboy, who, given his current standing, isn't he isn't in the top tier of fighters. He's just not right now. But it's not that he's not good. Like, Cowboy's always game and he's always good. He's always there and he can always win. But getting a win over him kind of puts you back in the active category and shows that you still have it, but it doesn't necessarily put you in the title hunt. It's just everybody just needs to realize it's just Conor's name. Conor could be thrown in for a title shot at any point because it's money.
In multiple weight classes. Yeah.
Yeah, 155, 170. I mean, I don't think he'll ever be able to make 145 again, but
no.
Yeah, Dustin Poirier, I thought Hooker would be able to win this fight with a variety of skills. I think he's more varied in his attack, and we saw that in the first 2 rounds. I mean, he has more
weapons. If those
weapons.
Guys fought 10 times, it would be 5-5.
It's pretty close, man, because he had Dustin rocked, and if that round is 5 seconds longer, maybe Herb steps in and stops the fight.
Yep.
I'm not using that as an excuse to say Hooker should have won. That's not what I'm saying. I hate when people say that shit. They're like, well, if that round went on 30 more seconds, but it didn't, and it wasn't, and maybe that's why it happened. Is people take chances in the last couple seconds of the round because they know they have that leeway.
But in terms of like why that fight was so good, it was so good because of the matchup and how well their skills from a positive and negative sense ended up battling against each other. Like what Dustin was doing well versus what Hooker was doing well, what they're both struggling with. I mean, like it was just a great matchup. It was a great fight.
I was surprised that Hooker. No, let me rephrase that. I wasn't surprised that Hooker was able to take the punches. I was more surprised that he, in the later rounds, it didn't kind of wilt. And I shouldn't have been surprised at that at all because we saw it again against Edson Barbosa where he kicked his legs off. Like he couldn't even move anymore, and Hooker still wanted to fight. So I think the only way to get Hooker out of there is to submit him or knock him out. I don't think he's never quitting. He's never mentally quitting. He's never quitting on the stool. None of that crap. And I thought that Poirier, with all that time off, might not have the cardio to go the distance, but Hooker got tired faster. I mean, they were both tired, and one of the things I also didn't take into account is that I know that Hooker's from New Zealand, but New Zealand had some of the strictest quarantine guidelines, which prevented him from training. So he focused
They ripped off the Band-Aid hard.
Yeah, well, but I mean, it worked for them, and that's
way, yeah.
good. But what it meant for him specifically is that he wasn't able to train like he normally does. So maybe those two things cancel each other out. Dustin coming off of surgery and a long time off, and Hooker not being able to train normally. So with a full camp and relatively like normal situation, I think we just see this fight even elevated a little bit higher.
And I think Poirier's fifth round experience probably came into play too. Like his experience in those later rounds, his ability to navigate that. I think that's also part of what shined through, especially when you saw him in that fifth round making very smart decisions, playing it well, putting it on Hooker.
I think he did 10% more than what Felder did, and that was the difference, especially in that final round. I remember Felder, being able to pick it up and start to catch Hooker later. I think Hooker is one of the most dangerous 3-round fighters. He's so good in that first round. That second round, he is, still really good. In the third round, he really doesn't start to wilt until midway. So, yeah, him versus Conor would be really interesting because it would be fireworks early on. I think Conor catches him on the chin quite a few times, and if he doesn't go out, we got a back and forth brawl going on there. So it'd be interesting. I'd even like to see Dan Hooker versus Justin Gaethje. I think Gaethje.
That's a banger.
Yeah. So, but part of me also wants Dan Hooker to take some time off and maybe take another guy who's not in the top 5, just to get his feet to get back on track again.
Yeah. I also want to see Dustin Poirier versus Gaethje. I mean, lightweight is just such an awesome division.
I'd like to see Dustin versus Conor. I know that Conor's going to play that one off, and it's really easy in the media and also easy for the UFC brass to stick behind Conor in that scenario where he'll be like, I already beat this guy once. I don't care. And, Dustin can be like, well, that was at 145 and that was 4 years ago. But it doesn't matter. A loss is a loss in a lot of people's eyes. So that might discourage anybody from wanting to see that fight again. Not me. I want to see it again. I think at 155, Dustin Poirier is a different fighter. I think Conor McGregor in 2020 is a different fighter. I'm interested. I would love to see that fight again. I still think Conor could win. I just want to see it again.
Yeah. Give me anything at lightweight with any of those guys, basically in that top tier, and I'm happy.
There's so many people in the 155 division where you can match them together on any given night. The split might be 70-30, 80-20, 60-40, 50-50, whatever it might be. And we're gonna see fireworks in the meantime. Like
Yep.
these lighter weight classes where and we've also stated this before 1,000 times. So we don't need to reiterate it, but 155 is the deepest and the best division. But I think one of the things that lends to these excellent outcomes, these excellent fights in the lower weight classes, is just the lower mass that's being thrown around. So each punch isn't necessarily fight ending. And if you have a good chin, you get to see these incredible fights that go the distance where, at light heavyweight with the punches that these guys were throwing and taking, like that's just not happening. Not in the modern era with no TRT, man. Like it's just not happening.
They got to get those iron necks. All right. But yeah, that was a absolutely amazing fight.
Yeah, I'd like to see them both take some time off. Dustin Poirier had a rough time walking out of there. I think that'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Dan Hooker had some damage done to his face. Obviously, I mean they both did. But yeah, I'd like both of them to take about 6 months off and see how the lightweight division shakes out, and then either one of these guys could get thrown right in the mix for a title again. So
absolutely,
lots of good stuff. One of my favorite storylines. Storylines.
This is incredible. I'll let you. You can do the background on it.
So I picked Mike Perry. Okay, I did not pick him this way. I did not think it was going to go this way. So Mike Perry, he came into the UFC as this explosive fighter. He's just like Ashley was. We were watching the fight together, and I was like, God, he's just so strong. And Ashley looks at him, and he's like, yeah, well, look at his back. It looks like your back. And I'm like, I have no athletic ability, like on par with him at all. But like the way he was able to throw him around, it's just incredible. So Mike Perry came to the UFC, like I said, as an explosive fighter. It wasn't Li Jingliang. He knocks out, I forget the Chinese fighter's name. He knocks him out. Then he has this, like, he has a couple explosive fights where, knocks out Jake Ellenberger with the elbow, does all this stuff. And in the meantime, he doesn't really have a camp. And at one point he ends up at Jackson Winklejohn. And that was the fight before the fight with Cowboy Cerrone. And he was doing great in that fight too. And I think all that stuff just led Mike Perry to feel like he was being used by a lot of people. Like he never had a home. And for this fight, he foregoed all official training camps and all normalcy to have his girlfriend be the only one in his corner. I don't know if that's ever been done in the UFC before, where like I've seen, a single cornerman, and I've seen people have their spouses or their significant others in their corner before, brothers, family, all that stuff. I've seen that, but I've never seen both of those things at once, especially with someone who has no fight experience.
I was going to say, does Paige ever corner her husband?
I don't know. But I remember that, like, Smiling Sam Alvey, I think his wife is in his corner all the time, but she has fight experience, and he obviously has two other people in his corner as well. I wish they would have mic'd her up more. I wish,
she should have had a headset on.
And she didn't say much. I thought in the corner. So all of that being said, and I remember I said this. I was like, far be it for me to tell Mike Perry what he needs in his corner. Okay, I think this situation is far better than what's going on with Diego Sanchez, where Diego Sanchez has the guru in his corner, where clearly he's looking for advice from this person, and this person is not necessarily not qualified, but has questionable qualifications. Let's call it that. Whereas he made it very clear.
I would argue she is more qualified for what he needed from his corner than Mr. fucking Guru is.
Well, what I'm saying is, for Mike Perry, he made it very clear why he wanted her in the corner. He was like, when it's me out there, it's just me. Nobody else can fight for me. I'm responsible for everything, and the only one I need in my corner is someone who wants a good seat. Like, that's it. That's all he wants, and he he fights almost the exact same way every time, maybe a little bit more reserved lately, and that's good. He's more patient with his shots. He's not constantly emptying the gas tank. And to be honest with you, man, this is the best he's ever looked. Mickey Gall's no joke, especially on the ground, and Mike Perry did whatever he wanted on the feet, on the ground, in the exchange, in the transitions, grappling, takedowns. He
Yep.
did whatever he wanted. He got caught a couple times, but Mickey Gall, and here, let me say this: Mickey Gall, his striking looks amazing compared to
Yeah.
where he was before. He looked fantastic, and that's the best Mickey Gall has ever looked. So, I mean, obviously there's levels to this, and I don't necessarily put Mickey Gall in like, you know, the title contention or anywhere near that. I don't even think he's ranked. But the point is, Mike Perry took out the best Mickey Gall we've seen, and he did it convincingly in almost every second of that fight. I don't see how anybody can take anything away from him.
Yeah.
And after the fight, he gives one of my favorite interviews of all time. And he's like, oh, y'all talking all that mess out there. He's like, no, you can't walk it back now. Don't you take anything away from Mickey Gall and say that like, oh well, he beat a less. No, you guys are all saying I was gonna lose. You're all saying this and that. And then he went on a rant about taxes, and he was basically saying, what was my he's like, oh yeah, the tax man gets. He's like, I gotta talk to the tax folk. He's like, the IRS gets paid when platinum gets paid. But he said something. He's like, "Oh yeah, don't give me the money if you don't want me to spend it." So
Yeah,
heard
that was great.
I've heard this from other fighters, not necessarily in a post-fight interview like that, but Donald Cerrone had talked about this before, where it wasn't the reason he was taking the fights, but it added to a reason to fight. He he mentioned it. I don't remember if it was on Rogan's podcast or in an official interview, but he basically was saying that he was fighting 3 or 4 times or 5 times a year, and at the end of the year he would owe money on taxes because he would just be spending it as he got it. And he's buying a lot of toys, having a lot of fun. Good for him. That's what he does. And he's got sponsorship deals and all this other stuff. So he's got a lot of money coming in, but he's just spending all of it. And at the end of the year, when the taxes are due, he's got none left. So he's got to fight like 3 times in the first couple months to pay off those taxes from the previous year. He's been better about this. Was like 5 years ago now. So I'm sure he's figured that situation out. But
Get an
Mike,
account, for God's sakes.
yeah, Mike Perry is not the first person to bring up the tax issue. And to see it like played out like that on ESPN and like prime time, that was really funny.
Yeah, I mean, my big takeaways from the fight: Mickey Gall, I thought looked great. Like, not, and maybe it wasn't the best version of Mickey Gall, but I think he definitely kind of showed he can hang in with someone that we consider at a pretty good level in the welterweight division. Like Mike Perry is no one to slouch over. So I think I'm interested to see who Mickey Gall goes after next and kind of how he approaches that game. In terms of the grappling, I don't think his issues with Mike Perry really takes away from his grappling. Mike Perry is just a monster, amazing wrestling, extremely strong, and it was fun to watch. It was a fun fight, just all around. It was not what I was expecting. I saw some good stuff.
No, I was expecting Mike Perry to knock him out early.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it, and I think my biggest takeaway from Mike Perry's corner situation was, if that's all you need, that's all you need. I mean, like, if he just needs his girl there to look her in the eyes and think like, oh yeah, this is why I'm doing it, then cool. If it works for him.
Yeah, and when in between rounds, she was like, "Hey, you're doing great."
Yeah.
Like, you're doing great. Like,
that might be better than half the sports psychologists out there having your your girl just be like, yeah, good job, keep it up.
She put the ice on his back and she was like, "Do you need water?" That's it.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another note. I just remembered. Mickey Gall grabbed the fence. Like,
oh yeah,
6 times.
pretty aggressively, and we got to do like I've noticed that a couple of times too. It wasn't just in that fight.
No, Mickey Gall is a dirty fighter. He bit Diego Sanchez. He's grabbed the fence multiple times. Like,
I don't know. He
I don't
bit
know.
Diego Sanchez. What?
Yeah, he bit him.
All right,
Yeah,
that's weird.
yeah. I'm not a fan of him. I mean, he looked fantastic, but I think I think he's just like a. You can call it scrappy, but I'm gonna say he's a dirty fucking fighter, man. Like he doesn't play by the rules at all.
I think fence grabs should be treated as harshly as eye pokes and groin shots. And it's good you reminded me of that. I forgot about all the fence grabbing. Like you get, and it should just be flat out. You get one warning, and then it's just points.
Yeah,
If you grab a fence a second time in a fight after a warning, it should be an immediate point loss, right there.
yeah. I said this before. I think about it all the time when I'm watching like a grappler take down a striker, and in the final round when clearly the striker is, down on points and he's just being dominated on the ground. I always wonder, like, just grab the fence and pull yourself up. I mean, the worst thing they're gonna do to you is put you back in that position and take a point. You're already fucking losing.
Yeah.
Just grab the fence, get back up, and try to knock them out. Whatever.
It should definitely be points need to be taken way more aggressively for fence grabbing.
Yeah.
Because now I feel like that's also been highlighted in the last couple of UFCs as being a serious problem.
Fence grab, groin strike, all this stupid. Like I'm really over it too because Poirier got kicked in the nuts twice in the first round.
I love the Bisping commentary though.
Yeah,
He's like when Poirier just told Hooker listen to Bisping.
yeah, yeah. It's there's and I've said this before too. Like during the fight when it's happening, we talk about it. We talk about it while they're recovering, but then immediately after that, it's like we forget about it. So if the person who got kicked in the nuts a bunch loses the fight, no one ever factors that in. No one factors in eye pokes in losing the fight. No one factors in the grabbing of the fence losing the fight. These are all things that can change the complexion of a fight, and they're all
Oh, yeah.
against the rules. So uh, it's one of those things where we talk about it in the moment, but the W at the end is what matters. And if nobody else is paying, like if no one else brings it up ever again, I mean, cheaters win, dude. It's just how it works. Like it
Unfortunately.
pays to cheat. Same with weight cutting, all that stuff. All right. This heavyweight fight was sloppy. I mean,
Yeah. I
Maurice
don't got a
Green
lot to say about it.
he looked really sharp. John Vellante, I've never been a fan of his. I don't like he had no cardio at light heavyweight. I didn't think him packing on 40 pounds of blubber was going to give him better cardio at heavyweight. You can say, oh, this is, like he used to play football at middle linebacker. That I don't give a crap. He looked like crap.
That does not necessarily translate.
And then he lands a big shot against Green and puts him on his ass in the third round, and then exhausts himself trying to finish the fight. And Green gets an art. I don't even know what it was. Like it was like a rear naked almost, like where he lined up like this, but it was a front choke. So there was barely any pressure, and all John had to do was step over the leg, and he was good. But he was just so exhausted, he tapped to it. Couple takeaways from this fight. John Vellante, it's not that he doesn't belong in the UFC. Sure as shit is not a heavyweight.
I will give him credit when you bring up that like front arm triangle choke. Randy Couture did that to me when I was in high school, and I almost blacked out in like 5 seconds. So
Randy Couture outweighs you by 120 pounds. Don't
exactly,
give me that crap.
but for a big guy doing that, like I'll give him credit. You can absolutely black someone out if you get the right position on that.
Fine, but
Yeah.
also you're not a professional fighter. You're not a heavyweight,
No, not at all.
and you're also not fighting for your career. So
Yeah, I'm just saying it's not like that's
no, do not give him excuses to tapping out to some bullshit just because you did it once when one of the best heavyweights of all time does it to you. That's not fair. That's not an equal comparison. No, John Vellante does not. I'm not saying he doesn't belong in the UFC, but he doesn't belong in heavyweight. And unless he gets his shit together, I would see them cutting him like right now. I don't see why.
Not when you got some of the great fighters you have at heavyweight, like competing right now. He's not in that realm at all.
I would give him the excuse of being, having the quarantine stuff that I've been given for everyone else. But honestly, he's looked like shit his last 4 fights. So I think it's kind of time to cut him. Maurice Green looked really sharp.
Hmm.
And, I'm
Did you
happy
give
for
him Dan
him.
Hardy as like this is your last shot?
Uh, I mean, that'd be fun. I think
Yeah.
Hardy tunes him up, but that'd be fun.
I think that would be a good opportunity for Hardy.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
fun.
Cool.
Maurice Green, like I said, he looked sharp. He's training at Jackson Wink now. Um, looks great. I don't see him ever cracking the top 5 at heavyweight unless it's just to get in by like a string of wins against lower tier competition. Because, dude, he can't take the shots from a guy who is a true light heavyweight. His cardio is pretty good, but not great. Like, that's not the best asset, and he doesn't have one punch knockout power later in the
God.
rounds. I mean,
Yeah.
he looks sharp, man, and I don't want to take anything away from him, and I hope he stays in because he's moving his family to New Mexico for all that other stuff, and like I think that's fantastic. But from that performance, I see all the holes in his game, and unless he tightens them all up and develops an insane, and also like he can't stop. Like I know he can't stop a takedown either. So anybody in the top 10 or top 5, if he starts putting together a string of wins, he might crack it and get a number next to his name. But the second he goes up against this guy's, I really feel like he's going to have a problem. um, it's hard to fight at heavyweight if you can't take a huge shot, and it's even harder if you don't have one yourself. So congratulations, man, but like he's got a lot of work to do. um, this fight was fun. The Brendan Allen versus Kyle Dawkins fight. That was crazy. Like
Oh,
Allen put it on him and cracked him, and I thought he was going to finish the fight in the first round. He didn't gas out, but they both got tired. He started putting it on him and went back and forth. Uh, that was a really good fight, man. And then in the third round, Dawkins finally gets on top and has position the entire time. Great win for Brendan Allen. First 2 rounds, clearly his. Third round, not his. Not at all. Some judge gave this a 30-27 for Brendan Allen. What the?
dude, don't even get me started on judges, especially in the
He
past like
was
3 months.
he was in a rear. He was defending a rear naked choke for 4 minutes of the final round, and then he got up and did a little bit of damage, which more power to him. Like he got out of the choke and fought it
Let's talk
off. Good
about
job.
dominant position.
So if you're So I feel like having dominant position for 30 seconds of a fight and then not getting it again doesn't mean much to me. Having dominant position and going for a submission doesn't mean much. Add in the fact that that submission is hold on, add in the fact if that submission is super tight and very close to finishing the fight, now it counts for something. Or vice versa, if you have that position for an extended period of time, you can't take you can't take anything away from that. There's nothing like that other fighter's the only thing he's doing is not losing the fight. So defense is its own reward. So fending off takedown attempts, fending off submission attempts, defending against shots, that's your own reward. You do not get points for defense.
All right, I'm gonna throw something at you. Could you give someone a 10-8 round if basically the entire round was spent on the mat and they were just putting on submission attempts, but they didn't get it, but they had a dominant position for over 4 minutes and were just attempting submissions? And the other person,
It depends on how close those submission attempts were.
oh,
If you have the rear naked choke, right? Let's use that one for an example. If the rear naked choke, like the arm goes underneath the neck, and they're in a position where, they have the person who's being submitted like is going 2-on-1 and constantly fighting that top hand. Like now, I could see that. Like if that happens over and over and over again for like 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, yeah, that could be a 10-8 round. But there's a lot of other submissions Um, a triangle is hard to score. Arm bars are very hard to. I don't like arm bars. I think they're sloppy now. Like I don't see a lot of people going for them because
It's a
people.
big risk. You can lose dominant position, and yeah.
Well, if you're elite at jujitsu and you're good at it, you practice arm bars and like that's one of your thing, you know how to safely go for an arm bar and not lose position. But a lot of the times what you see in the UFC is someone goes for an arm bar and they immediately give up their back if they go belly down, or they give up like if they have the back and they're trying to go for the choke, but then they reach around, grab the arm, and then throw the leg over and go for the armbar. If they lose that armbar, like they're gonna lose position. It's one of those things where like you'll see Damian Maya really doesn't attempt armbars like that, but you'll see someone like Verdum or these elite guys. If they go for an armbar, they have a back door where they're like, this armbar is not working. I'm getting back into submission or position, right? Where a lot of these guys, the other guys, they go for a submission and completely lose the position afterwards. So that's what I'm saying. So like armbar, like a Kimura, right? That one to me is it's really obvious when it's bad because like the person kind of like flops around, like they're clearly trying to escape that Kimura. An armbar, I mean, you could be locked up in an armbar for a while and not be in any real danger, like while you're slowly moving your elbow back and pulling your elbow out. And then it could end in an instant if like they just get the right hip pressure and are able to put some pressure on your bone or your elbow just the right way. So that's what I'm saying. It's hard to score a submission attempt when they're sparse, or certain submission attempts are very hard to grade and give a 10-8 and say that they're close to finishing. But like I said, the easiest one for me is if you have someone's back the whole time and you're throwing rear naked chokes. Like, yeah, I could see a 10-8.
Okay.
That round, if they gave Dawkins a 10-8, I wouldn't have been mad. Like I would have
Yeah.
actually been okay with it because he had dominant position. He was trying to finish the fight and he was a couple steps away from finishing the fight multiple times. So it would have been okay. I wouldn't have given him a 10-8 because I don't think victory was imminent for him. But
If like one judge gave him a 10-8 and the other ones gave him a 10-9, I wouldn't
yeah,
be
that
upset.
would
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool.
This heavyweight fight was interesting because Philippe Lenz has looked really good and he's got really crisp striking and decent power. Like I said, he's the one who lost that decision to Arlovsky. He looked really, like, again, really crisp. But Tanner Boser looks explosive as hell. Like he lost weight and he's getting in shape. Like heavyweight is bumping, man. I'm excited to
right?
see I'm excited to see where he goes because he's got some fucking killer power. It was so cool. That fight was really good, and I think it's worth watching him going forward. That was really good.
Yeah, there's been some like a just injection of both fresh blood as well as, you know, some journeyman fighters just putting together some good wins in heavyweight, which have me really excited about the division. I think this is the first time I can remember in a long time that I've been more excited about heavyweight than I have been light heavyweight. Like, just when you look at the fights that they're getting ready to make, some of the different matchup combinations, you know, some of the different prospects coming up, I think there's some things to look forward to in heavyweight. Probably at least for the next couple of years to come, there's some good storylines that can come together, and, you know, some very interesting things that can happen. And it can potentially become competitive enough to where you need a more than 3-win fight streak if you want to make it to the top. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think heavyweight is it's always been this way where you get two impressive wins and all of a sudden you're in the title hunt, and that's fine.
But
I don't
I think it's starting to get deep enough to where you need more than that. And
I
At
think
least I
that's just
think over the
because of the
next couple of
log
years.
jam.
Yeah.
I think
But
once DC's gone, I think it's gonna shake back out, and people are just gonna be filtering through again. Because one of the problems with having a fighter like DC, who I love, by the way, I think he's fantastic for the sport. I think he's a great ambassador for the sport. I think he's an excellent commentator and a tremendous fighter. I'm not taking anything away from him. What I'm saying is when you have a fighter like that who is so well like revered and regarded by his peers and his employers, it gives him a lot of leeway to do whatever he wants. And on top of that, he is getting older and near the tail end of his career, so he's very selective about what he
mhm.
wants to do. So now all of a sudden you're seeing a guy who's allowed to do what he wants to do and doesn't want to do much. So you're basically the heavyweight division is at the whims of whatever DC feels like doing. That sounds a little bit dramatic, but that's actually what's happened. If you look over the past 2 years, 2.5 years, maybe even 3 years, like around when DC was supposed to fight Stipe for the first time. Ever since then, the heavyweight division has been on hold to see, hey, what does DC want to do?
And that's not. I don't think a logjam is necessarily the worst thing in the world for some divisions. I think that helps get some prospects starting to build up and compete at a higher
Oh,
level. I think there's some divisions that could probably use a logjam.
yeah, because then you don't end up killing off all of your prospects by just being like, well, he's got 2 wins, let's throw him a title shot. So yeah, I agree.
Mhm.
And I think at light heavyweight, we could have used that the past couple of years. Now we have some contenders, and I think it's the division's moving on regardless.
I don't think it is ever going to happen, but I would love to see Curtis Blades versus Daniel Cormier. That would have been,
I think that'd be fun.
yeah.
I think DC would make that fight very difficult for Curtis. But I also think that DC's hittable, but more than that, you can take him down.
Yeah.
Like you can take for all of his wrestling prowess, you can take him down. I
That's
mean, we've
that's what I mean.
seen everybody do it.
It would be interesting. Like,
Not everybody, but John Jones and Stipe did it.
yeah. So only two of the best to ever do it. All right.
Yeah, but neither one of them is an Olympic wrestler.
No.
No, so like these guys are not Olympic wrestlers. They're just good. John Jones was a good wrestler. Stipe was a good wrestler. More importantly, I think Curtis is a better wrestler than both of those guys put together.
I mean,
So
he
like
put that on display for sure.
that's what I'm saying. I think that fight it would be fun to see, but you're right. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. All right.
So we actually don't. We don't have any fights this weekend.
Is that like that's got to be a first?
Yeah, there's no fights until July 11th. Actually,
251.
yep, the big one.
Cool.
Okay, that's the end of this one. Great night of fights.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm excited. Like I said, I'm kind of bummed that we don't have any fights coming up this weekend. But it will be nice to have a Saturday, which is kind of cool. Also, real quick before we go away, I don't like ESPN Plus. I think, or the app. I think it's shit.
Yep.
It's been awful. On my computer, it's been bad. On my phone, it's been better, but it's still not good. PlayStation 4, it's been atrocious.
It does
It's
not
not
navigate well. It doesn't sit like if I watch half of a documentary and I go back to it, it doesn't save the fact that I was watching that at some point. It just starts it over from the beginning.
The
It just
UI
reset.
is
Yeah.
so bad. Like
Oh,
I was
God.
watching when I was watching the Jordan documentary, it would pause and time out. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is just coming from your servers, and this has nothing to do with my internet. I've never had a problem with specifically referencing the UFC. I've never had a problem with UFC Fight Pass. Fight Pass works every fucking time. And on Fight Pass, they have the little dots at the bottom of the screen for like,
For the
oh,
fights.
this fight
Yep.
started there. That's nice.
ESPN would probably be better off just using Fight Pass and
Or
like
just
linking
yeah.
you to it.
Be like, hey, we have a better app for you. Why don't you use theirs? All right, this one was a little bit shorter. I want to thank everybody for listening again. Make sure, like, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. If you're just watching this on YouTube, remember there's an audio version if you're interested in that on Spotify and Podbean and vice versa. So for Brendan, that's the me, or for Brendan, I'm a fucking idiot. For Nate and me, talking about myself in the third person, like I'm a fucking politician. That's so gross. All right. So for Nate and Brendan, everybody, I hope you guys have an amazing day and a great week.
Yeah, for both of us. Yeah, I know y'all are stuck at home during these hard times. Some of you might be back to work, but yeah, keep your head up and do the best you can.
All right. Later, everybody.
Have a good one.